During the worst snowstorm of the year, a billionaire heard a sound no one else noticed. Two 4-year-old girls waiting in a silent subway. One small promise led to a missing mother, a borrowed teddy bear, and a night that quietly rewrote every life involved forever without warning or permission given. New York never truly slept. Even in winter, even past midnight, the city breathed sirens in the distance, traffic murmuring like a restless sea. But that night, the storm changed everything. Snow fell sideways, thick and relentless, swallowing sound and light alike. From the top floor of the Croswell Capitol building, Julian Cross, 58, stood alone by the window. Below him, Manhattan faded into a moving white blur, streets erased as if the city itself were being rewritten. Julian adjusted his tie out of habit. It was an old reflex, one he'd kept long after meetings stopped requiring it. Power, success, control, those things had once given his life shape. Now they felt like furniture in a house no one lived in. "Sir, the storm is getting worse." His assistant's voice came through the intercom, careful and professional. "The driver is ready." Julian shook his head. "Send everyone home, I'll walk." It wasn't pride. It wasn't stubbornness. It was the quiet waiting for him at the mansion, wide rooms, polished floors, and the echo of a life that had ended 12 years ago when Mar and his wife slipped away too soon. The elevator descended in silence. The lobby lights reflected off marble that looked almost holy under the snow-muted glow. The doorman offered concern. Julian waved it off, gently pulling his coat tighter as the revolving doors opened. Cold struck immediately, sharp, honest, unavoidable. The city looked smaller now, vulnerable. Julian lowered his head and walked. 2 blocks ahead, the subway entrance glowed faintly. He didn't know yet that this storm, this single ordinary decision to walk home, was already bending his life in a direction no boardroom ever could. The wind howled down the avenue, filling Julian's ears with noise, yet somehow beneath it all, something else reached him. A sound too small to belong to the storm. He slowed near the subway entrance. Snow piled along the steps, the city sign flickering above. The station should have been empty. Everything was empty tonight. Then he heard it again. Not a cry, not a scream, a quiet, uneven breath. The sound of someone trying very hard not to cry. Down stopped. For a moment he told himself it was nothing. Wind through tunnels, metal shifting in the cold. The city playing tricks. But instinct, something older than logic, pulled him forward. The air inside the station was warmer, heavy with stillness. Lights buzzed overhead. On the platform far from the tracks, 2 tiny figures sat curled together like fallen birds. They were little girls, no more than 4 years old. Their coats were thin, their shoes damp curls clinging to their cheeks. One held a worn teddy bear against her chest, squeezing it as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. Julian didn't rush. He crouched several steps away, lowering himself to their level. "Hey," he said softly, careful with every syllable. "I'm not here to scare you." 2 pairs of wide eyes lifted toward him. The girl with the teddy bear spoke first, her voice trembling but clear. "Mommy said she'd be right back." The other girl didn't speak. She only reached for her sister's sleeve, fingers tight. Julian's chest tightened, not from fear but from recognition. He knew that sentence. "She'll be right back." "How long ago?" he asked gently. The quiet girl shrugged. The other whispered, "A long time." Snow rattled against the station walls. Julian looked around. No adults, no footsteps, no help coming. And in that moment, he understood something terrifyingly simple. Sometimes the city doesn't notice when 2 small lives slip through the cracks. Julian removed his gloves, slowly placing them in his coat pocket so his hands were visible. Open. Empty. "My name is Julian," he said. "What are yours?" The teddy bear shifted as the braver girl straightened. "I'm Lila," she said. "This is Maisie." Maisie peeked out, then nodded once, solemn as if agreeing to something important. "Hi, Lila." "Hi, Maisie." Julian smiled, careful not to overdo it. Do you know where your mom went? She went to get food? Lila answered. She said we had to stay here. Maisie's lip trembled. She promised. Promises. Julian swallowed. Do you know your mom's name? He asked. Camilla, Lila said immediately. She smells like flowers. It was such a small detail, yet it landed like truth. Julian pulled out his phone and stepped a few feet away, making the call in plain sight. Emergency lines rang busy, again and again. He documented the attempts, his face tightening with each failure. When he returned, Maisie watched him closely. You calling Mommy? She asked. I'm trying to help find her, Julian said honestly. While we wait, are you cold? They nodded together. Julian slipped off his coat and spread it open like a blanket, wrapping it gently around both girls. They didn't resist. Lila held the teddy bear between them like a shared heart. Maisie looked up at him, then eyes searching. Are we in trouble? No, Julian said immediately. You're not in trouble, you're safe. Lila hesitated, then carefully placed the teddy bear into Julian's hands. He's Mr. Patches, she said. He makes people come back. Julian froze. A billionaire who had signed contracts worth fortunes now stood holding a threadbare toy, feeling for the first time in years the weight of a promise he could not afford to break. Julian did not stand up right away. Snow hissed faintly against the tiled walls of the station, as if the storm itself were listening. He looked at the two girls wrapped in his coat, too small for a night like this, too quiet for a city this large. He checked his phone again. Still no signal. Still no response. This was the moment that mattered. Julian had built his career on timing, knowing when to wait and when to move. But this wasn't a market. These weren't numbers. These were two children whose world had narrowed to a subway platform and a promise that hadn't come true. Lila, he said calmly, handing the teddy bear back. Maisie, I want to help you stay warm and safe while we find your mom. Maisie tilted her head. Here, Julian shook his head gently. Somewhere warmer. Somewhere quiet. The girls exchanged a look, one of those silent conversations only siblings seemed capable of. Lila studied Julian's face, searching for something she didn't yet have words for. You won't make us leave, Mommy, she said. Julian met her eyes. No. I promise. We're just waiting in a safe place. Promises again. He felt their weight before he spoke them. He called emergency services once more, deliberately keeping the call on speaker so the girls could hear the automated response. He explained slowly and clearly why he was making a different choice. Then he stood, offering one hand, not grabbing, not rushing. Lila took it first. Maisie hesitated, then stepped closer, her fingers brushing Julian's coat sleeve. As they moved toward the stairs, Julian stayed between them and the tracks. The wind followed them up louder now, but the girls stayed close. For the first time since the storm began, Julian felt afraid. Not of failing, of being responsible. Cross Manor had always looked impressive from the outside. 5 stories of stone and iron-tall windows glowing softly against the snow. To most people it was a symbol of success. To Julian, it had become a place where sound went to disappear. The gates opened automatically. The girls stared. That's your house, Lila asked. Julian nodded. Yes, it's big, Maisie whispered. It's very quiet. Inside, warmth wrapped around them instantly. Before Julian could say a word, Elena, the housekeeper, appeared from the hall, her eyes widening at the sight of 2 small figures clinging to his sides. She didn't ask questions. She knelt. Oh, sweetheart, she said gently, holding out towels like an invitation, not a demand. You must be freezing. Lila allowed herself to be guided toward the kitchen. Maisie stayed close to Julian until Elena smiled at her too. Hot chocolate steamed on the counter minutes later. Pajamas, soft, clean, far too large, waited by the fire. Julian explained everything quietly. Where he found them. What he'd tried. What he was still doing. Elena listened, nodding once. You did right, she said. Now let's make sure they feel safe. As the girls sipped cocoa color, slowly returning to their cheeks, Julian made calls from the next room, documenting times, leaving messages following procedure. Lila glanced up. "Are you calling Mommy again?" "Yes," Julian said. "Every chance I get." Maisie traced a finger along the mug's rim. "She always comes back," she said, more hope than certainty. Julian watched the fire reflect in the glass cabinets, felt the house breathing again, faintly, carefully. For the first time in years, Cross Manor was not empty. It was waiting. The guest room had never been used. It was immaculate, untouched, like a promise Julian never planned to keep. Now soft lamps glowed and two small shapes sat side by side on the bed, feet barely touching the floor. Elena tucked blankets around them with practiced care. "No locked doors," she told the girls kindly. "And I'll be right downstairs." Julian stayed by the doorway. Lila hugged Mr. Patches. "Do you have kids?" she asked suddenly. Julian paused. "No." Maisie looked up. "Why not?" He searched for a simple truth. "Because sometimes life goes differently than we expect." She accepted that without comment. As Elena stepped out, Maisie's eyes followed her, then returned to Julian. "Will you leave too?" Julian crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed, keeping space, keeping respect. "No," he said quietly. "I'll be here." The girls lay down, still watching him, as if afraid the room might swallow them once they closed their eyes. Minutes passed. Maisie whispered, "Mr. Patches gets scared at night." Julian reached out, hesitated, then placed the teddy bear carefully between them like a guardian. "He won't be alone," he said. Lila's eyes fluttered. "Angels show up when we need them," she murmured, already drifting. Julian stayed until their breathing slowed, until the storm outside softened into a distant hush. Downstairs, the mansion felt different. Not warmer, alive. Julian stood in the hallway long after the door was closed, understanding something for the first time in years. This night wasn't about rescue. It was about trust. Morning arrived without ceremony. The storm had eased sometime before dawn, leaving the city wrapped in white as if New York itself were holding its breath. Pale sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Cross Manor, touching surfaces that hadn't felt warmth in years. Julian was already awake. He stood in the kitchen with a mug of untouched coffee, staring at his phone. Still no return calls. Still no confirmation. Just a growing list of missed connections and unanswered questions. From upstairs came a soft sound, bare feet on carpet. Lila appeared, first, hair sticking up in every direction, Mr. Patches tucked firmly under her arm. Maisie followed, rubbing one eye, scanning the unfamiliar hallway with quiet caution. Elena greeted them like it was the most normal morning in the world. "Good morning, sunshine," she said, placing pancakes on the table. "Extra syrup today." The girls climbed onto the chair's legs, swinging. For a few minutes, they ate happily, distracted by warmth and sweetness. Then Maisie looked up. "Did Mommy call?" she asked. The room stilled. Julian knelt beside the table, careful to be at their level. "Not yet," he said honestly. "But we're still looking, and today more people can help." Lila studied his face. "You didn't forget?" "No," Julian said. "I don't forget things like this." Maisie nodded once, accepting that answer for now. A knock echoed through the mansion. It was sharp, official, out of place. Elena's eyes met Julian's. "I'll get it," he said, already moving. At the door stood a man in a dark coat badge, visible but unobtrusive. His expression was calm, not threatening, but serious. "Mr. Cross," the man asked. "Officer Nolan Hart. Family Services Liaison." Julian felt something tighten in his chest, not fear, but awareness. The storm had passed. Now came the rules. "I believe you found 2 missing children last night," Nolan continued. "May we talk?" Julian stepped aside. "Of course." From the dining room, 2 small heads peeked around the corner. The day had officially begun. Officer Nolan Hart did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone shifted the air, bringing with it structure, procedure, and the quiet weight of authority. He removed his gloves before sitting, a small gesture that didn't go unnoticed by the girls watching from the doorway. "Good morning," Nolan said gently. "My name is Nolan. I'm here to make sure everyone is safe." Lila tightened her grip on Mr. Patches. Maisie leaned closer to her sister. Julian remained standing. "I found them at the subway station last night. I attempted to contact emergency services multiple times. The storm, I see your call logs," Nolan said calmly, holding up his tablet. "You did the right thing. That mattered more than Julian expected." Nolan crouched slowly, bringing himself to the girl's level. "Hi, Lila. Hi, Maisie. You didn't do anything wrong?" Maisie studied his badge. "Are you police? I work with families," Nolan answered. "My job is to help kids stay safe while we find their parents." Lila asked the question Julian had been bracing for. "Are you taking us away?" The room went very quiet. "No," Nolan said clearly. "Not right now." Julian finally spoke. "What happens next?" Legally, Nolan explained, the girls should be placed under temporary protective supervision while we locate their mother. However, he paused, choosing his words. "Given the storm, the circumstances, and the stability of this environment, I can authorize an emergency temporary arrangement." Elena exhaled softly. "They can stay?" Julian asked. "Yes," Nolan said. "For now, with conditions, documentation, medical checks, and full cooperation." "You'll have it," Julian replied immediately. Nolan looked at him carefully. "Do you have experience caring for children, Mr. Cross?" "No," Julian said, "but I have capable staff, a safe home," and he hesitated. "I care." That answer lingered. Nolan nodded. "Then we proceed carefully." Maisie tugged Julian's sleeve. "Is Mommy still lost?" Nolan answered before Julian could. "We're looking for her right now. Many people are." Lila lifted Mr. Patches. "He helps." Nolan smiled. "Not professionally, genuinely." "Then we're lucky to have him on the team." For the first time since the knock at the door, the tension eased. But Julian knew this was only the beginning. By midday, the house felt fuller and heavier. Phones rang. Documents were printed. Elena moved quietly but efficiently, maintaining a sense of calm that wrapped the girls like an invisible shield. Julian stood near the window listening as Officer Nolan took a call in the next room. "Yes," Nolan said. "Near the Crosswell Tower area." "Yes, 2 girls. We're following protocol." Julian's stomach tightened. Crosswell Tower. His building. Nolan returned his expression unchanged, but his eyes more alert. "There was a structural incident near one of your properties last night," he said carefully. "We're checking hospitals and shelters. It may take time." Julian nodded, absorbing the words. "I need to go there," he said. Elena froze. "Now, yes," Julian replied. "If their mother was nearby, I need to help identify her." The girls had been listening. "No," Leela said suddenly, sliding off her chair. She ran to Julian, wrapping her arms around his leg. "Don't go." Maisie followed, smaller arms joining in, trembling but determined. "You said you'd stay," Maisie whispered. Julian crouched immediately, heart pounding. "I will come back," he said. "I promise. I just need to help find your mom." Lila shook her head. She said that too. The words hit harder than any accusation. Julian closed his eyes for half a second, then reached into his pocket and pulled out Mr. Patches, offering him back to Lila. Lila pushed the bear into Julian's chest instead. "Then take him," she said. "So you have to come back." The room seemed to stop. Julian accepted the teddy bear with hands that trembled despite years of control. "I will," he said quietly. "I swear." Officer Nolan watched in silence, understanding the weight of what had just been exchanged. As Julian stood to leave, he felt it clearly now. This wasn't about finding answers. It was about earning the right to keep a promise to 2 4-year-olds who had already waited too long. Croswell Tower rose from the snow like a wounded giant. Yellow tape fluttered in the wind. Emergency lights pulsed against white drifts. The street was crowded with responders, helmets, radios, measured movements, order pressed tightly against chaos. Julian stepped out of the car with Officer Nolan at his side. He followed instructions without argument, accepted protective gear kept to marked paths. This was not a boardroom. This was not his territory. "Stay close," Nolan said. "And if anyone tells you to stop, you stop." Julian nodded. Inside the cordon, the air smelled of cold metal and damp concrete. Sections of the lower structure had been closed overnight due to snow load and a ruptured gas line. No flames, no sirens now, just aftermath. A security supervisor recognized Julian immediately. "Mr. Cross, we weren't expecting. I'm not here as an owner," Julian said. "I'm here to help." They moved carefully through the ground floor where responders coordinated lists, names checked, faces remembered, times logged. Julian listened, asked quietly, showed the photo Nolan held on a tablet, 2 4-year-old girls, Lila and Maisie, smiling with their heads pressed together. "Have you seen their mother?" Julian asked again and again. "Her name is Camilla. She smells like flowers." Most shook their heads. Then a night guard paused. "There was a woman," he said slowly. "Young, very worried. She kept asking about 2 little girls. This was late before everything shut down." Julian's pulse quickened. "Where did you see her last?" "Near the food court entrance," the guard replied. "She was pacing, on her phone. Then security asked her to step back while we checked something." Nolan's eyes met Julian's. A direction. A time. They moved. The food court area was partially closed but intact. Tables stacked. Chairs pushed aside. A responder approached with a clipboard. "We found a personal item earlier," she said. "Maybe relevant." She handed Nolan a sealed evidence bag. Inside a purse. Scuffed, practical. The kind of bag that carried everything important, because there was no room for anything extra. Nolan opened the wallet carefully. An ID card slid free. Camilla Reyes, 29. Julian's breath left him all at once. There was also a folded photo. Nolan held it up. Lila and Maisie. Same coats. Same smiles. For a long moment, Julian couldn't move. He touched the glass case of the photo like it might disappear. "She was here," he said. "Not a question. A truth." Nolan nodded. "Which means we expand the search." Julian straightened. "Then we don't stop." Back at Cross Manor, time slowed into something thick and heavy. Elena kept the day-structured lunch at noon, drawing at the kitchen table, quiet music playing low. The girls followed her rhythm instinctively, like swimmers trusting a steady current. Julian was not there. Maisie noticed first. "He said he'd come back," she murmured, lining crayons into perfect rows. "He will," Lila replied, confident but watchful. She drew a house with too many windows and placed 2 small figures in every room. Elena sat with them, never hovering, never leaving. "He's helping people," she said, "and he'll be home soon." At the tower, Julian moved between hospitals and temporary shelters with Nolan. They showed the photo, asked the same careful questions, logged names, times, leads. A nurse remembered a woman who matched Camilla's description, admitted briefly for smoke inhalation, then transferred. Records were incomplete due to the storm. A volunteer recalled giving directions to a frantic mother near a bus stop. No name, no confirmation. Each answer brought hope, and then took it away. Julian's phone buzzed. A message from Elena, "They're okay. They're asking about you." He typed back, "Tell them I'm still looking. Tell them I'm coming home." Hours passed. By evening, the temperature dropped again. Nolan made the call. "We pause for tonight," he said gently. "Search resumes at first light." Julian wanted to argue. He didn't. At the mansion, the girls waited by the window, small hands pressed against cold glass. When Julian's car finally appeared, Lila gasped. Maisie didn't move, she just closed her eyes. Julian stepped inside and immediately knelt. "I'm back," he said softly. They ran to him, not panicked, not desperate, just relieved. Lila checked his pockets. "Where's Mr. Patches?" she asked. Julian pulled the teddy bear out carefully. "He stayed with me the whole time." Maisie leaned into his shoulder. "Did you find Mommy?" Julian chose every word. "Not yet, but we know she was nearby, and that helps." The girls accepted this with a seriousness far older than 4. At dinner, Maisie set a third napkin at the table. "For Mommy," she said quietly. Julian didn't move it. Later, when the girls slept, Julian sat alone with Mr. Patches resting on his knee. The mansion felt vast again, but not empty. Not anymore. The call came just after midnight. Julian was awake, staring at the ceiling when his phone vibrated. Officer Nolan's name lit the screen. "We may have found her," Nolan said. His voice was steady but softer than usual. Julian sat up. "Where Metropolitan Hospital, ICU, unidentified patient admitted after the incident. Fingerprints just came back." Julian closed his eyes. Relief and fear collided in his chest. "Is she alive?" he asked. "Yes," Nolan said. "She's stable, sedated, severe smoke exposure and burns, non-life-threatening according to the attending physician." Julian was already standing. "I'm coming." "No," Nolan replied firmly. "Not yet. It's late and visitation is restricted. Tomorrow morning." Julian nodded, forcing himself to slow down. Down the hall, a small door opened. Lila stood there in pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Maisie appeared behind her. "You're not sleeping," Lila said. Julian crossed the hall and crouched. "Neither are you." Maisie looked at the phone in his hand. "Is it Mommy?" Julian hesitated, then chose honesty with care. "Yes, we found her." The silence that followed was absolute. Then Lila whispered, "Is she coming home?" Julian shook his head gently. "She's getting help from doctors. She needs time to get strong." Maisie reached out, touching Mr. Patches's ear. "He worked." "Yes," Julian said. "He did." The girls didn't cry. They climbed onto Julian's lap, one on each side, as if gravity had finally returned. "We'll see her?" Lila asked. "Soon," Julian promised. "I'll be with you." When they finally slept, Julian stayed awake, watching over them, understanding the truth at last. The hardest part wasn't the search. It was becoming someone 2 children trusted with their hope. Morning light arrived like an apology. New York was still buried under snow, but the sky had cleared enough for sunlight to turn every rooftop into glass. Cross Manor looked almost peaceful. Too peaceful for what had happened inside it, 2 little girls sleeping in a guest room that had waited years to matter. Julian moved carefully through the hallway, as if loud steps might shatter something fragile. When he pushed open the door, he found Lila awake, already sitting cross-legged with Mr. Patches in her lap, like a meeting chair. Maisie lay on her side, eyes open, watching the room the way quiet children watch adults learning what the world is. Elena followed Julian in, with a warm tray, oatmeal, sliced bananas, and cocoa, simple things made important by intention. "Good morning," Elena said softly. "We have news today." Lila's eyes went straight to Julian's face. "Good news or bad?" Julian's throat tightened. 4 years old and already asking the question adults avoid. "News that matters," he answered. He sat on the edge of the bed, leaving space, keeping his voice steady. "We found your mom." Maisie's fingers curled in the blanket. "We're in a hospital," Julian said. "Doctors are helping her. She's safe." Lila's shoulders rose with a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Then the next question, sharp as a pin. Why didn't she come back? There it was. The crack in the promise. Julian didn't rush to fill it. He looked at Officer Nolan's folder on the dresser, paperwork procedure, the adult skeleton of a child's fear. Then he looked at the girls. Sometimes he said carefully, grown-ups face problems they don't know how to solve alone. Your mom got hurt while she was trying to find you. Maisie stared at his hands. Is it because we did something? Julian felt something in his chest pull tight the way metal bends before it breaks. No, he said immediately. No, sweetheart. Not even a little bit. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You stayed together. You waited. You were brave. Elena sat at the foot of the bed, a steady presence. Your mommy loves you, she added. And she's getting better. Lila hugged Mr. Patches so hard his stitched ear bent. Can we see her now? Julian glanced at Nolan, who had arrived quietly and waited in the doorway. Nolan stepped in with that calm, lawful gentleness that felt like a seatbelt. Not yet, Nolan said. Your mom is still sleeping because her body needs rest. The doctors will tell us when it's safe for you to visit. And when you go, we'll do it the right way, quiet voices, gentle hugs. Lila frowned. But she'll wake up, yes, Nolan said. And when she does, she'll know you're safe. Maisie whispered, almost like she didn't want the words to hear themselves. Will she be scared? Julian leaned forward slightly. She might feel a lot of things. But we're going to help her and you. That's what grown-ups do. Lila watched him for a long beat, then held out Mr. Patches. Take him, she said. So Mommy knows you kept your promise. Julian took the teddy bear with both hands. He felt absurdly honored, like he'd been promoted into a role he hadn't earned yet. Okay, he said. I'll bring him to her. And I'll bring you to her as soon as the doctors say yes. The girls nodded. They didn't cheer. They didn't bounce. They simply accepted the shape of the day. Downstairs, Julian signed more forms with Nolan. Temporary guardianship conditions, health checks, a scheduled visit, a formal report to confirm he had acted appropriately during the emergency. Julian didn't argue. He welcomed the structure. It was the only way to protect what mattered now. Before leaving, he returned upstairs once more. Lila and Maisie stood at the window watching the snow drift from a tree branch like a slow exhale. Julian touched the pocket where Mr. Patches rested. I'll be back before dinner. Maisie turned serious. You'll come back. Julian met her eyes. I will, because now he understood the most dangerous thing you can give a child isn't a storm. It's an uncertain promise. Metropolitan Hospital didn't look like a miracle from the outside. It looked like an institution doing its best in a city that had just taken a hard hit. Snow was piled along the sidewalks, and people moved with the tired speed of those who had been awake for too long. Inside, everything was brighter, cleaner, organized chaos softened by competence. Officer Nolan guided Julian through security and into a quiet wing. She's stable, Nolan said again, as if repeating it could anchor Julian's thoughts. She's sedated. The doctor will speak with us first. A physician met them at the door. Clear voice, calm explanation. No dramatic language, just facts delivered with care. She's recovering, the doctor said. We're keeping her comfortable and monitoring her closely. With time and support, she should do very well. Julian nodded like he understood the words. But what he understood was this: behind that door was a mother whose children were calling for her in a mansion that didn't belong to them. The doctor stepped aside. You may go in. Quietly. Julian entered. Camilla Reyes looked smaller than the story Julian had built in his head. She was 29, but exhaustion had made her seem older in the way a long winter makes a city feel ancient. Her hair was pulled back. Medical tape and bandages covered part of one side, handled respectfully, non-graphic signs of repair rather than harm. Machines hummed softly. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and warm linen. Julian approached the bedside and placed Mr. Patches on the small table like an offering. For a moment, he didn't speak. He simply stood there, hands clasped, feeling something unfamiliar, helplessness that wasn't weakness, just reality. Camilla stirred slightly. The nurse adjusted something, checked a monitor, then nodded. She may wake soon. If she does, keep it gentle. Julian pulled up a chair and sat. He wasn't used to waiting without leverage. But here the only currency was patience. Minutes passed. Camilla's eyelids fluttered. Her gaze struggled to find focus. Confusion, then a sudden sharpness that made her inhale like she'd been underwater. Her voice was dry. My daughters. Julian leaned forward, not too close. They're safe, he said softly. Lila and Maisie are safe. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes immediately, as if her body had been saving them for the first moment it could afford to release them. Where are they? Camilla whispered. At my home, Julian said. My name is Julian Cross. I found them at a subway station during the storm. Recognition flickered across her face, not of him as a person, but of his name as a headline. Wealth. Tower. The kind of world she cleaned after business hours. Her eyes widened with fear that wasn't about him, it was about what her life looked like next to his. I need to see them, she said, trying to sit up. The nurse gently guided her back. Easy, she murmured. You're safe. We'll take it step by step. Julian raised a hand slightly, a nonverbal promise to respect medical boundaries. You will see them, he told Camilla. Soon. The doctor wants you to rest first. Then we'll bring them in the right way. Camilla's breathing trembled. Did they? She swallowed hard. Did they cry? Julian remembered Maisie's hand on the window. Lila setting Mr. Patches down like a contract. The third napkin at dinner. They asked for you, he said. Every day. Camilla shut her eyes. A sound escaped her, not a scream, not a breakdown, but the quiet sound of a person realizing she was still alive and must face everything that came with it. Julian kept his voice steady. Officer Nolan is helping with the legal steps. Elena, my housekeeper, has been caring for them like family. Camilla opened her eyes again, staring at Mr. Patches. Her lips trembled. Mr. Patches, she whispered, almost reverent. Lila won't sleep without him. She gave him to me, Julian said. So I'd come back, so I'd keep my promise. A long silence settled between them, not empty, full. Camilla's gaze lifted to Julian. Why would you do this? She asked, voice barely holding together. Julian thought of his mansion before laughter. His life before these two names mattered. Because they needed help, he answered. And because I think I did too. Outside the window, snow drifted down in slow, harmless flakes. Inside, a mother and a stranger shared the same fragile truth. Some rescues are physical. The deepest ones are not. Camilla slept again after the nurse adjusted her medication. The doctor insisted she needed rest, and Julian didn't argue. He learned quickly that real care meant accepting limits. He stepped into the hallway with Officer Nolan, who spoke quietly. We'll arrange a supervised visit for the girls, Nolan said. Therapy support, too. Not because anyone's broken, because storms leave marks even when we do everything right. Julian nodded. Do whatever is needed. He should have left then. Gone back to Cross Manor. Returned to the children waiting for his footsteps. But something kept him near the room, like a string tied to a promise. When Julian re-entered, Camilla was awake again. This time her eyes held a different kind of fear, not the fear of hospitals, but the fear of being seen. Mr. Cross, Julian, she corrected herself. I need to tell you something before I lose the nerve. Julian sat back down, careful. Okay. Camilla swallowed, her gaze fixed on the blanket. That night, I wasn't just getting food. Julian didn't react. He kept his face open, not accusing, not shocked. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals, but he'd never negotiated trust with someone who had nothing to spare. I was desperate, Camilla continued. My building was being condemned. Eviction notice. My jobs, 2 of them were cutting hours because of the storm. And my youngest, Maisie, she's sensitive. She gets sick easily in the cold. She stopped breathing through emotion. I kept telling myself love would be enough, but love doesn't pay for heat. Julian's jaw tightened, not at her, but at the system that demanded a mother choose between dignity and survival. Camilla's hands shook slightly on the blanket. A family I met months ago. They offered help. They said they could give my girls everything. Warm rooms, school safety. They were kind about it. Her voice cracked. I told them no. I said my daughters weren't something to be handed away. Julian didn't interrupt. But they gave me a card, she said, in case I ever changed my mind. Silence sat down between them. Camilla pressed her lips together as if holding back a truth that tasted like shame. That night I got the final notice. The building was going to be cleared for development. I had nowhere to go. I stood in my kitchen and looked at that card, and she shook her head quickly. I hated myself for even touching it. Julian's chest felt tight. He remembered Nolan's report how the redevelopment project linked back to his real estate arm. How a signature could displace a family without ever meeting their faces. Camilla's eyes glistened. I took the girls to the station. I told them I was getting food. I told them to stay together. She inhaled sharply, then forced the next words out like lifting something heavy. For a few minutes I thought maybe I was doing the least terrible thing. That maybe someone else could give them a life I couldn't. Julian's hand tightened around the edge of the chair. He kept his voice steady, and then Camilla's tears slipped free. Then I couldn't do it. I walked away and my heart, it screamed. I ran back. 10 steps maybe. I ran back and her voice broke. They were gone. Julian pictured the platform. 2 small bodies curled into each other. Mr. Patches held like a lifeline. Camilla covered her face with her hand. I searched everywhere. I thought the worst. I panicked. Someone told me they might have gone into your building for warmth and She stopped exhausted. I went in. I was looking for my girls when everything happened. Julian sat in silence for a long moment. Not the silence of judgment, the silence of understanding how close a life can come to breaking. Finally, Camilla whispered, "Do they hate me?" Julian reached for Mr. Patches and placed the teddy bear gently in her hands. "They love you," he said. They never stopped. Camilla stared at the bear like it was proof she was still allowed to exist in their world. "I don't deserve that," she whispered. Julian thought of Marin, of all the nights he had promised later and meant it until later was gone, of regret that money couldn't refund. "Love isn't a paycheck," he said quietly. "It isn't something you earn perfectly. It's something you protect one decision at a time. Starting now." Camilla's shoulders trembled. "How do I fix it?" "You don't fix it alone," Julian answered. "We do it the right way, with help, with honesty, with support that doesn't disappear when the headlines fade." Camilla looked up, hope and fear wrestling in her eyes. Julian didn't look away. Outside, snow fell softly, almost gentle. Inside, a mother held a worn teddy bear, and maybe for the first time in months, believed she still had a path forward. Not because the past was erased, because she was being offered what every human being needs to survive a storm, a second chance. The visit was planned with care. A quiet hospital room, soft light. Chairs placed at a respectful distance. A nurse nearby, not hovering, just present. Officer Nolan explained the rules to Lila and Maisie in simple words, gentle voices, no jumping, slow hugs. Julian held each girl's hand as they entered. Camilla lay propped against pillows, her face partly bandaged, eyes wide with a fear that softened the instant she saw them. Mommy Lila breathed. Camilla's arms opened slowly. "My loves." The girls approached like they were stepping into water, testing careful. Maisie reached first, touching her mother's hand, as if to confirm she was real. Lila followed, wrapping her arms gently around Camilla's shoulder. I'm here, Camilla whispered. I'm staying. Maisie leaned in forehead against Camilla's arm. She didn't speak. She just breathed steady and deep, like she was relearning how. Lila noticed Mr. Patches on the bedside table. She lifted him, inspected his stitched ear, then placed him in Camilla's hands. He helped, she said seriously. Camilla smiled through tears. I know. He always does. Julian stood back, giving the moment space. He watched as Camilla listened, really listened to the girl's stories about pancakes, drawings, and Elena's humming in the kitchen. No blame. No explanations yet. Just presence. The nurse nodded gently. 10 more minutes. When it was time to go, Maisie hesitated. You'll be here when we come back, Camilla met her eyes. Every day, the girls left hand in hand, quieter than they'd entered, but lighter. Outside the room, Julian exhaled. The hardest moment hadn't broken anyone. It had held. That night, Julian couldn't sleep. He sat in his study with legal documents spread across the desk, Mr. Patches resting beside them like a paperweight that mattered. Numbers blurred, words sharpened. He called Officer Nolan. I want to do more than temporary solutions. Nolan listened. Tell me what you're thinking. Julian spoke carefully. A foundation, emergency housing partnerships, guaranteed healthcare coverage for contract workers, living wages, childcare stipends, policies that didn't vanish when storms passed. And Camilla Nolan asked. She needs stability, Julian said. Not charity. Opportunity. By morning, calls were made. Lawyers reviewed drafts. Advisors raised concerns about cost and optics. Julian overruled them calmly. At Cross Manor, Elena watched him pace the kitchen while the girls colored. You look different, she said. Julian glanced at Lila and Maisie, heads bent together over a drawing of a house with 3 figures inside. I am. Later he met Camilla again, this time with a social worker present, consent forms ready, choices explained. No pressure, Julian said. Only options. Camilla read slowly. Therapy support, housing assistance, a role at a new foundation once she recovered, helping families navigate crises like hers. School placements for the girls' transportation included. She looked up, overwhelmed. Why me? Julian didn't pretend it was simple. Because your daughters found me, and because I helped build a system that made your life harder. This is me taking responsibility. Camilla nodded, tears steady now, not collapsing. Then I'll take it, for them. Across the room, Lila showed Maisie a crayon rainbow. This is Mommy's room, she said. Maisie added a sun. Weeks passed. Camilla healed steadily. Visits became routine, predictable, safe. The girls returned to school playgroups with guidance counselors present. Nights at Cross Manor softened into something like normal. Julian kept his promise. He came back before dinner. He sat for stories. He listened when Maisie asked careful questions and when Lila declared big plans. One evening, the girls waited by the window as snow melted into streams along the curb. Camilla arrived with a nurse's clearance and a smile that finally reached her eyes. Home, Lila announced. Camilla knelt and opened her arms. Yes, home. Julian stood back, letting the words settle. He felt Mr. Patches's absence in his pocket and smiled. At dinner, there were 4 napkins now, and laughter that didn't echo. Later, as Camilla tucked the girls in, Julian paused in the doorway. Lila looked up. You kept the promise. Julian nodded. So did you. Camilla joined him in the hall. I don't know how to thank you. Julian shook his head. You already did. You came back. Outside, the city breathed again, not erased by snow revealed. Julian understood that success wasn't the height of a building. It was the courage to lower your walls and let a family stand where emptiness used to be. 1 year later, the city remembered the storm differently, not as destruction, but as a turning point. Croswell Tower stood restored, its glass facade catching winter light like a promise kept. Inside the lobby, a small plaque honored the night the building closed early and lives were protected. No names were carved in gold, just a date and a quiet line about responsibility. Julian Cross adjusted his tie, not from habit this time, but anticipation. Across the hall, laughter echoed. Lila and Maisie, now 5, ran toward him, coats half-zipped, faces bright, with the kind of confidence only safe children carry. Mr. Patches swung between them, his stitched ear mended once again. Uncle Julian, Lila called. "Mommy's ready." Camilla stepped into view, calm and steady. No hospital bands, no fear behind her eyes. Just a woman who had survived and rebuilt. "Are you nervous?" Julian asked. Camilla smiled. A little, but not scared. The doors opened. Guests filled the room, teachers, social workers, families, city officials. At the center stood a simple banner. The Crosswell Foundation, housing, care, dignity. Julian took the stage. "A year ago," he said, voice steady, "this city faced a storm we couldn't control. But what we built after that was a choice." He looked toward the girls. Sometimes angels don't arrive with wings. Sometimes they're 4 years old, holding a teddy bear, waiting in the cold, and reminding us who we're meant to be. Applause rose, but Julian barely heard it, because the real miracle stood right in front of him. Later that night, the mansion was full again, but this time it felt right. Camilla sat in the library reading aloud, one child tucked under each arm. Lila corrected every dramatic pause. Maisie turned pages slowly, reverently, like books were doors. Julian watched from the doorway. After the story, Maisie asked softly, "Can we tell the storm story?" Camilla hesitated, then nodded. Lila took charge. "There was snow," she said, "and we were cold, but we stayed together. And Uncle Julian listened," Maisie added. "He didn't hurry us." Camilla kissed their hair. "And you were very brave." Lila frowned thoughtfully. "Mommy was brave too. She came back." Camilla's eyes shone. "Yes, I did." Maisie hugged Mr. Patches. He helped everyone. Julian finally stepped in. He did a lot of work. They laughed soft, easy laughter, the kind that doesn't echo with pain. Later, as the girls slept, Camilla stood beside Julian at the window. "I used to think redemption was something you begged for," she said. "Now I know it's something you practice." Julian nodded. "Every day." Outside, a light snow began to fall, not dangerous, not loud. Just enough to remind them. Some storms pass. Others teach. On the first quiet night of winter, Julian walked through the mansion alone. He passed rooms that once held nothing but silence. Now there were drawings on the fridge, shoes by the door. A small coat hung crooked on a hook. In the guest room now, Lila's room, Mr. Patches rested on a pillow, watching over sleep the way he always had. Julian paused. He thought of the man he'd been before the storm, the one who believed control was safety, distance was strength. He knew better now. Down the hall, Camilla turned off the light in Maisie's room, leaving the door open just enough. She met Julian's eyes. "They're dreaming," she whispered. Julian smiled. "So am I." They stood together, listening to the house breathe. Outside, New York moved on, busy, loud, imperfect. But inside these walls, something rare had taken root. Not rescue, not charity, family. And if anyone asked Julian Cross what changed his life, he wouldn't say a storm. He wouldn't say a foundation. He wouldn't even say redemption. He would say this: 2 small hands, 1 worn teddy bear, and the moment he chose not to walk past. Did this story move your soul? Share your feelings in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Click the end screen to watch another heartfelt video. See you in the next story.